Have you ever entered a room and, without saying a single word, felt every eye instinctively glance your way? There's a strange electricity, an invisible pressure that follows you, and you can't quite explain why. You're not doing anything to draw attention, and yet something inside you stirs people. They feel something from you before you've spoken, before you've even sat down. Carl Jung had a name for this phenomenon: Archetypal Presence. It's not learned, it's not trained. It's something you are born with. This presence isn't about charm, appearance, or conventional intellect. It doesn't fit into simple categories. It's a frequency, a vibration that shakes the unconscious of others. It comes from depth, emotional, spiritual, psychological depth, and only a small fraction of people carry it. Jung believed that less than 1% of individuals truly embody this kind of energy. And when you do, the world around you notices, often before you do. Some are drawn to you instantly. Others recoil, unsure of what they're reacting to. You might make people feel uneasy without meaning to. They might describe you as intense, mysterious, or overwhelming. But what they're really feeling is a confrontation, not with you, but with themselves. Your presence has a way of revealing parts of people they weren't ready to face. Without effort, without intention, you awaken the shadows others try to ignore. Jung wouldn't label this as charisma. He'd call it archetypal tension. It's the invisible pressure created when someone carries unprocessed truths deep within. That weight, your aura, radiates. You don't need to speak it. Others feel it in their bones. And in a world obsessed with small talk, surface-level smiles, and artificial harmony, your authenticity disturbs the equilibrium. People can't categorize you, so they project onto you. Your energy doesn't scream, yet it's loud. It doesn't dominate, yet it disrupts. It feels ancient, like a memory from a dream. This isn't something you chose. It's something that chose you. And now you carry it into every space you enter, changing the emotional temperature without trying. Not everyone will understand it. Fewer will appreciate it. But it doesn't make it any less real. People may glance away, overly laugh, or try too hard to be nice. Others may gossip or fall strangely quiet when you enter. These are reactions to your presence, not your personality. In you, people feel seen, not with your eyes, but with your being. That kind of seeing strips away defenses and masks, and for most, that's deeply uncomfortable. Because vulnerability, especially uninvited, is terrifying. But that discomfort isn't your burden. It's their awakening. What you carry is sacred. It's not a performance. It's not an act. It's a reflection of truth. And truth has a way of making people nervous. You might have noticed that people often feel unsettled after spending time around you. They leave conversations a little quieter, a bit more introspective, or in some cases, visibly drained. You didn't say anything offensive. You didn't criticize or confront. Yet your presence stirred something. Carl Jung explained that when someone walks around holding unresolved truths, their very existence becomes a mirror to others' unconscious minds. It's not that you speak the truth. It's that you embody it. Most of the modern world is built upon avoidance, avoiding silence, avoiding depth, avoiding discomfort. But your aura disrupts that illusion. It's not aggressive, but it is piercing. Without meaning to, you show people their cracks, their inner contradictions, their hidden shame. And not everyone wants to see that. Some might describe you as too much. Others will call you distant. But in reality, they're reacting to what you reflect, not who you are. Because when you enter a space, you do something very few can. You see without looking. And being truly seen, without filters, without pretense, is one of the rarest and most terrifying experiences in today's world. Your presence doesn't just disrupt the room, it realigns it. You create a ripple. People lower their voices. They become more aware of their own words. Some overcompensate with forced friendliness. Others withdraw into silence. They aren't sure what they're feeling, only that something inside them has shifted. That shift is not accidental, it's instinctive, it's archetypal. Jung spoke often of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or project. When someone with your depth enters the room, that shadow stirs, it awakens. And when it awakens, it seeks to project. This explains why people may seem overly defensive or strangely hostile. They are not reacting to you. They are reacting to the parts of themselves they've refused to acknowledge and that your energy has unknowingly brought to the surface. Your presence doesn't just affect strangers. It impacts those closest to you. Loved ones may feel conflicted around you. Friends may share their deepest thoughts without intending to. Some people open up to you more than they ever have with anyone else. And then, suddenly, they pull away. They ghost you. They go cold. You're left confused, wondering what you did wrong. But here's the truth. You didn't do anything wrong. You simply held space for someone to see themselves. You made them feel vulnerable, and in that moment, they couldn't handle it. So they left. Not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. You symbolize depth in a world of surface. You carry reality in a culture of illusions. 1. You make people nervous without saying a word. There's a subtle but undeniable shift that occurs when you walk into a room. You don't have to speak, move, or even make eye contact. And yet, the energy changes. It's as if your presence carries a silent weight, one that presses on the unconscious of everyone around you. People may not know why, but they feel it. Carl Jung described this as archetypal tension, a psychological atmosphere created by individuals who carry unprocessed, deeply integrated truths. Most people have grown used to operating in a carefully managed version of reality, polished conversations, rehearsed smiles, emotional autopilot. But when someone enters a space carrying a different kind of energy, raw, real, and unfiltered, it disrupts that flow. Your presence doesn't accommodate the usual masks. It doesn't play along with the performance. It simply is. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. Some may call you intense. Others may avoid your gaze. A few might act overly friendly in an attempt to bridge the unspoken tension. But it's not about what you say or do. It's about what you evoke. You awaken something deep in people, often before they're conscious of it. They may not even understand why they're nervous. They just are. And that confusion, that inner tension, is their unconscious brushing against something real. Jung believed that people with this rare aura stir what he called the collective unconscious. It's a vast psychological layer shared by all humans, containing symbols, instincts, and truths that we often suppress. When you walk in, you activate that layer. You remind people, without words, of their unresolved emotions. You reflect what they've avoided. And here's what's so paradoxical. You're not trying to do anything. In fact, you may be doing your best to stay small, stay quiet, stay neutral, but your neutrality itself is a contrast. Your silence feels louder than most people's words. Your stillness makes others restless. You're not invading their space, but your authenticity reveals how much they've abandoned theirs. This can lead to gossip, distance, or people acting strange after meeting you. You might notice that people talk about you when you leave, not because of what you said, but because of how they felt. That's the power of resonance. You leave a psychological imprint. And whether they liked it or not, they can't ignore it. But this isn't a flaw. It's a function of truth. In a world desperate to stay asleep, you are a subtle alarm. And while alarms aren't always welcome, they serve a purpose. Your presence is a wake-up call, one that echoes even in your silence. 2. You carry the weight of something you can't explain. There's a heaviness inside you, an invisible gravity that's been there since you were a child. It's not just sadness, though it holds sadness within it. It's not merely anxiety, though it sometimes feels like unease. And it's not entirely trauma, even if your past carries wounds. No, this weight is something else. It's a knowing, a deep, silent, nonverbal awareness that you are carrying something meaningful, something forgotten by the world but remembered by your soul. Carl Jung would say your unconscious is more active than most, that you live closer to the collective unconscious, that deep ocean of symbols, instincts, and inherited memory that binds all of us. When the waves of that ocean stir, you feel them. Even when no one else notices the current, you sense the pull. You've likely walked through life feeling what others miss. You recognize lies masked by perfect words. You sense tension in the air before anyone says a thing. Crowded rooms tire you, not because you dislike people, but because you absorb the emotions they're not even aware they're radiating. You're not just an empath. You're a transmitter. You receive more than most can carry. This weight you feel isn't a burden in the conventional sense. It's a signal, a compass. It points you inward, toward silence, toward meaning, toward what Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. It's not about perfection. It's about integration, merging the light and the dark, the conscious and the unconscious. And for those walking that path, the world often feels like a poor fit. You may have grown up asking different questions, not how do I fit in, but why do I feel so much? Or what's really happening beneath all this noise? Others pursued approval. You pursued truth, even when it cost you comfort, even when it isolated you. Because somewhere deep inside, you knew there was something more. This rare awareness makes you spiritually older than your years. You may have carried wisdom long before you had the language to express it. You may have felt like a stranger to your own peers, too deep, too different, too aware. And then while you've tried at times to shrink yourself to fit in, to smile more, to feel less, you never could truly pretend. Because that knowing inside you won't be silenced. It refuses to be ignored. This inner weight isn't there to crush you. It's there to anchor you. It keeps you from floating aimlessly through a superficial life. It reminds you that there's more beneath the surface, more to uncover, more to become. And while it may make you feel different, isolated, even misunderstood, it also makes you real. 3. You make people feel seen in ways they can't handle. There's a strange phenomenon that occurs when people talk to you. They may begin with casual chatter, surface-level phrases, everyday politeness. But soon, often without knowing why, their tone shifts, their posture softens, their words slow down. And then, almost as if something took over, they begin revealing pieces of themselves they've never said aloud. Emotions, memories, confessions, things they haven't even admitted to themselves. What's happening in those moments isn't magic, but it is powerful. Carl Jung referred to this as the influence of the mirror archetype. When someone carries a rare aura, like you do, they unconsciously act as a mirror. Not the kind that reflects the face, but the kind that reflects the soul. You don't interrogate. You don't prod. You simply are. And in your being, people feel safe enough, or compelled enough, to face what's been hidden. It's not something you plan. In fact, you might feel confused or even uncomfortable when people suddenly open up. You didn't ask for that level of honesty, but somehow your silence invites it. Your presence holds space for truths to surface. And while that can be beautiful, it can also be overwhelming, both for them and for you. You've probably noticed that after these vulnerable exchanges, people often retreat. They go quiet. They act strangely the next time you see them. They might even distance themselves or disappear entirely. This isn't because you harmed them. It's because you awakened something within them and they weren't ready. Jung described this as projection collapse. People often operate behind psychological masks, personas they've built to survive, to be liked, to function. When someone like you reflects back something real, something raw, those masks start to crack. The illusion falters, and what they feel isn't always relief. It's vulnerability. It's discomfort. And often that discomfort is redirected at you. This is one of the hardest parts of having a rare aura. You give people presence, truth, space, and they respond with withdrawal or even blame. You might ask yourself, what did I do wrong? But the answer is nothing. You simply held a mirror. And for some, that's too much. People aren't used to being seen without effort. They're used to performing. When someone sees them beneath the performance, it feels destabilizing. You unintentionally expose the difference between who they are and who they pretend to be. And that confrontation, while healing, is also frightening. You may not get thanked. You may not even get acknowledged. But don't mistake that for failure. You left them with something they'll carry long after you're gone, something they may only understand years later. Sometimes you might hear things like, I don't know why I said all that, or I usually don't open up like this. People feel seen around you, and that's not always comforting to them. It shakes loose emotions they've buried, truths they've layered over, and wounds they've tried to forget. You didn't ask for their secrets, yet they offer them. You didn't dig, but something in your energy unearths what's hidden, and then just as suddenly, they retreat. The intimacy of the moment turns into distance. They ghost you. They avoid eye contact. They act like nothing happened, or worse, they pretend you never mattered, and you're left holding a space they've already fled. This cycle can feel personal, but it isn't. It's psychological. Jung believed that when someone's internal mask is challenged, the ego often reacts with resistance. It might respond with defensiveness, mockery, silence, or anger. But beneath all those reactions is fear. Fear of being known too deeply. Fear of losing control over their image. Fear of what it means to be emotionally naked, even for a second. And because you didn't ask for their performance, they feel they can't keep it up around you. Your presence makes pretense feel unbearable. It's like a light they didn't request is now shining on their inner world, and they don't know how to stand in it. So they blame the light. They blame you. Your intuitive ability to see people beyond their words isn't learned. It's instinctual. You don't analyze, you feel, you don't push, you receive. And somehow, without meaning to, you speak directly to the parts of them they thought no one noticed. Jung taught that true transformation begins with awareness, and awareness often begins in the presence of someone who reflects back what we've denied. That's what you do, effortlessly, sometimes painfully. You trigger transformation, not with your words, but with your stillness. Not with confrontation, but with connection. But here's the hard truth. The deeper the connection, the more likely it is to scare people. Because most people aren't used to feeling emotionally naked. They're used to hiding, even from themselves. And when someone comes along and sees past the layers, their nervous system responds like it's under threat. So when they vanish, when they ghost, when they act like you were too much, understand this: you were never too much. You were just more real than they were ready for. And in a world where most people spend their lives pretending, your authenticity is louder than any voice. You're not here to fix anyone. You're not here to chase anyone. You're here to hold presence. And those who are ready will feel that as a gift. Those who aren't will feel it as a challenge. Either way, you did your part simply by being true. 4. You walk through life feeling like you don't belong anywhere. You could be surrounded by people who love you, in a room full of warm laughter and kind faces, and still feel like a guest in your own life. There's a quiet sensation, not always painful, but ever-present, that whispers, "You're not really part of this." It's like watching the world through a window, even when you're standing in the center of it. You exist in it, but not of it. Carl Jung described this as the path of the individuated soul, the person who cannot and should not fully merge with the crowd. For people like you, belonging was never the point. You were never meant to lose yourself in the noise. You were built to stand just outside it, to see clearly, to sense deeply, to know beyond the surface. And that comes with a cost. You've likely spent years trying to belong. You studied how people laughed, how they reacted, how they connected. You practiced the rhythm, learned the lines, tried to blend in, but it always felt like acting, like watching a play, not living the story. You were near connection, but not in it. That's because your soul is wired for something else. Not approval, not popularity, not comfort, but truth. And truth rarely fits in. It stands apart. It questions. It sees through illusions. You don't just hear what people say. You feel what they mean. And that depth doesn't always mesh well with a world built on shallow validation. You've probably felt this at work, in friend groups, even in relationships. Moments where you looked around and thought, why do I feel like an outsider in a room full of people who care about me? It's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you were never meant to fully disappear into groupthink. Your role is to observe, to reflect, to challenge what's been normalized. And while this perspective is powerful, it can also feel lonely. Not because others are rejecting you, but because you're walking a path few even recognize. Jung said that those who commit to inner work, who face their shadows and integrate their truths, will naturally feel alienated from a world that avoids that journey. It's not elitism. It's simply distance born of depth. You're the one who questions things others accept, who feels things more deeply than circumstances seem to justify, who finds it hard to celebrate what others chase. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're awake. And when you wake up in a world still asleep, it's hard to find where you belong. This sense of not belonging isn't a flaw. It's not something to fix. It's the natural signature of someone who has seen too much, felt too deeply, and refused to go numb. You were never meant to blend into the background. You were born to see the pattern behind the curtain, the meaning behind the moment, the truth behind the words. And for that, solitude often becomes your companion. Not the kind of solitude that isolates you, but the kind that frees you. Because while you may not always find your place in the crowd, you often find peace in your own company. You're not bored when you're alone. You're discovering, listening, resting, observing. You're letting your inner world breathe. But even in that peace, there's a longing, a deep yearning to be met, to be seen without translation, to be held without needing to soften yourself first. You don't want many people. You just want real ones. The kind of connection where you don't have to shrink, where you don't have to wear your public face, where your quiet, your intensity, your complexity isn't just tolerated, but welcomed. And that's the paradox of carrying a rare aura. People are drawn to your energy, but they don't know what to do with it. They admire your presence, but they fear its power. They're intrigued by your insight, but feel challenged by its depth. They say you're different, but can't seem to sit with different without trying to label, change, or fix it. So you keep walking, talking to people, but rarely feeling met, offering your truth, but watching it fall into silence, explaining your heart only to be misunderstood. But you continue, not out of stubbornness, but out of something much deeper, the whisper inside that tells you, you weren't made for the crowd. You were made for something more. That more isn't about status, applause, or even inner peace. It's about wholeness, becoming fully yourself, living a life that aligns with your essence, not just your role. And in that journey, the ache of not belonging transforms into something sacred, solitude with purpose. Eventually, solitude stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like a sanctuary, a place where your soul doesn't need to shout, where your truth doesn't need to be translated, where you can finally stop performing and just be. And in that space, something incredible happens. You begin to attract others who speak the same unspoken language. Not many, but enough. 5. You're constantly misunderstood because you communicate beyond words. You try to speak carefully. You try to explain yourself clearly. And yet, no matter how well-intentioned you are, your words are often misunderstood. It's one of the most frustrating experiences. You offer calm, and people hear criticism. You express neutrality, and it's taken as judgment. You say nothing, and that silence is interpreted as coldness, arrogance, or rejection. This isn't because you're a poor communicator. It's because your aura speaks louder than your voice. Carl Jung taught that we don't communicate just through words, but through subtle, unconscious signals, facial expressions, emotional vibrations, body language, even silence. For someone with a rare aura, your presence communicates depth, truth, and perception that bypasses normal social interaction. Most people are only equipped to receive surface signals. They expect interactions that follow scripts, polite, predictable, easy to digest. But your presence doesn't play by those rules. It stirs something deeper. You don't just respond to what's said, you react to the truth behind the words. You're not fooled by performance. You hear the tension in someone's voice, even if their sentence is calm. You sense the dissonance between what someone says and what they really feel. That's why people feel unsettled around you. They may not know why, but they feel seen in ways they didn't ask for. You're not trying to expose them, but your authenticity brings contrast. They feel the discrepancy between their mask and your truth, and they project. Suddenly, your stillness feels intimidating. Your quiet becomes judgment. Your passion sounds like accusation. Jung emphasized the power of projection, how people unconsciously assign their unacknowledged emotions onto others. And when someone like you, who is grounded, self-aware, and emotionally attuned, enters their space, their projections go into overdrive. You're not being perceived as you are. You're being interpreted through their unresolved inner world. This dynamic can become exhausting. You start second-guessing your words. You withdraw from conversations. You hesitate to speak deeply because you've learned most people don't want depth. They want comfort. You might even begin to doubt your clarity, wondering, am I really that hard to understand? But the truth is, you're not. You're just communicating in a frequency most people aren't tuned to. You've evolved past small talk. You speak the language of the soul, and that language doesn't translate easily in a world conditioned to avoid discomfort. Jung believed that the more a person walks the path of individuation, the process of integrating all aspects of the self, the more symbolic and intuitive their communication becomes. You don't just speak to people's ears. You speak to their unconscious. That's why your calmness carries weight. Your silence contains meaning, and your gaze alone can feel like a spotlight. To those who are unaware of their own emotional terrain, your presence feels like pressure. They can't articulate it. But something about you feels too much. They may say you're overthinking or too deep. But what they really mean is, they're not ready to meet themselves in the mirror you hold up. Your energy doesn't attack, but it confronts. It doesn't expose others, but it removes the comfort of hiding. And while that kind of communication can lead to profound connection, it often results in emotional retreat. People pull away. They misunderstand. They create narratives to explain why they suddenly feel overwhelmed around you. And because this happens so often, you may feel tempted to shrink, to simplify your thoughts, to avoid the kind of honesty that feels like intensity to others. But don't. Your truth isn't the problem. Their unreadiness is. It's not your job to make your soul easier to digest. It's not your responsibility to dilute your presence so others feel more at ease. Your depth is not a flaw. It's a filter. It filters out what's inauthentic. It reveals what's unresolved. And yes, that comes with misunderstanding, but it also comes with meaning. You may speak softly, but leave people shaken. You may say little, but spark transformation. And you may walk away thinking the moment meant nothing, only to find out years later that your presence shifted someone's entire path. The irony is that while most misunderstand you in the moment, they remember you long after. Your words echo in their silence. Your presence lingers in their mind. And when the time is right, when they're ready to hear what you actually meant, it clicks. So no, you're not broken. You're just ahead of the curve, speaking in a language most people haven't yet learned to understand. 6. You attract people who want to change you and then resent you for not changing. People are often drawn to you with admiration. They're magnetized by your depth, your calm presence, your grounded authenticity. They'll call you different, refreshing, wise beyond your years. But that admiration quickly turns into something else: discomfort, frustration, even resentment. Not because you misled them, but because you refused to become who they wanted you to be. Carl Jung would describe this as a collision between the individuated self, you, and the projections of others. When someone encounters your rare aura, it stirs something in them. They don't just see you, they see a fantasy. They project their unmet needs, emotional voids, and subconscious longings onto you. They think you'll fill their gaps. They assume your mystery is submission, your silence is compliance, your presence is pliability. At first, it feels like connection. You feel seen, appreciated. But then the pressure starts to build. They want you to be more responsive, more predictable, more like them. Smile more, be less serious, be easier to read, be more normal. And when you resist, when you stay true to your nature, their fantasy shatters. And with that shattering comes anger, not directed at themselves for projecting, but at you for not living up to the role they created. You become the villain in a story you never agreed to be part of. You might hear things like, "Why are you so distant?" Or "Why can't you just open up more?" Or perhaps they vanish without explanation, leaving you with confusion and guilt that was never yours to carry. This dynamic is especially painful in close relationships, romantic, familial or friendships, you offer emotional depth and honesty, but they want comfort and control. You offer silence and presence, but they want predictability and emotional catering. And the moment they realize you won't bend to fit their mold, they turn away or turn on you. But this isn't your fault. Jung would call it projection collapse, when the fantasy someone clings to falls apart in the presence of truth. Your refusal to conform isn't rejection, it's integrity. And while others may not see it that way, it doesn't make it any less valid. You're not difficult, you're just whole. And that wholeness disrupts people who haven't yet integrated their own contradictions. You probably experienced the emotional whiplash of someone adoring you one moment and resenting you the next. It's a painful loop. You offer authenticity. They try to mold you. You resist. They feel rejected. You stay grounded. They call you cold. But none of it is really about you. It's about what your presence exposes in them. Most people aren't used to someone who holds their ground. They're used to others adapting, softening, playing along. But you, whether by choice or by life-shaping, have learned to remain rooted. You don't morph for approval. You don't dim yourself for connection. That kind of stability is rare and, for many, unnerving. Carl Jung emphasized that individuals on the path to individuation, the journey of becoming a fully realized self, often endure phases of loss, exile, and rejection, not because they're flawed, but because they no longer serve other people's illusions. Your sovereignty is threatening to those who have never known unconditional love or internal clarity. They loved your light until it cast shadows on their wounds. They wanted your calm until it revealed their chaos. This pattern isn't limited to intimate relationships. It happens in workplaces, families, communities. You show up as yourself and people react, not to your actions, but to their own inner discomfort. You don't need to explain this over and over. You don't need to fix the way you exist to soothe others. The solution is discernment, to recognize the signs when admiration shifts into control, when curiosity turns into criticism. You were never meant to be everyone's solution. Your energy isn't designed to be possessed. It's meant to be witnessed, and that alone is enough to filter out those who only want you on their terms. You'll still attract people. That won't stop. But you'll begin to feel the difference. Who's drawn to your truth, and who's drawn to the version of you they hope to manipulate. And when that tension shows up, you'll no longer shrink to preserve the connection. You'll walk away not out of pride, but out of alignment, because the cost of betraying yourself is far greater than the cost of disappointing someone else's illusion. You are not here to be edited. You are here to be whole. And anyone who can't meet you there isn't rejecting you. They're rejecting the part of themselves they still haven't faced. 7. You often feel pulled between two worlds. There's a persistent tug inside you, like your soul is split between two realities. One is the visible world, structured, logical, filled with routines, tasks, social norms. The other is quieter, deeper, harder to define, but just as real. It whispers in moments of stillness. It calls to you in dreams, during music, in the hush between heartbeats. And though it offers no clear roadmap, it feels more like home than anything you've known. Carl Jung described this inner tension as the divide between the persona, the mask we wear to function in society, and the self, the totality of who we truly are. Most people live comfortably inside their mask, but you're aware of the mask, and you can't unsee it. You play your roles, go to work, engage in conversation, but it never feels fully natural. A part of you is always elsewhere, watching, listening for something more. You're not escaping reality. You're responding to something deeper, something sacred. That second world you feel isn't fantasy. It's the realm of meaning, intuition, energy, and symbols. It speaks through synchronicity, metaphor, silence. It's the home of archetypes, creativity, soul memory, and it doesn't obey the logic of clocks or calendars. You feel closest to it when you're alone, in nature, in meditation, in music, in art. These aren't hobbies for you, they're portals, anchors that remind you who you really are when the noise of the world threatens to drown it out. But this dual awareness comes at a price. You may appear distracted or distant. People may say you're too sensitive, too abstract, too much in your head. But what they don't realize is that you're constantly bridging two worlds, holding the tension between what is and what could be, between form and formlessness, between the collective dream and your private truth. It's exhausting at times. You give energy to the visible world, all while nurturing an inner life most never even touch. You long to belong here, but you also long for a reality that transcends this one. And that paradox can feel isolating until you realize your role is not to choose one world over the other. Your role is to walk between them. Jung believed that those who commit to the path of inner truth eventually become bridges, translators between the unconscious and the conscious, the sacred and the mundane. You weren't made to live like everyone else. You were made to remind them of what they've forgotten. And that is holy work. 8. Your existence alone awakens something in others they can't explain. Even in silence, you change the room. You don't have to try. You don't have to perform. Just by existing, you activate something in the people around you. They may fidget, open up, over-explain, or suddenly withdraw. They don't know why, but they feel seen. They feel different. And that shift, subtle as it is, lingers. Carl Jung believed that those who integrate both light and shadow radiate coherence, a kind of inner alignment that is deeply rare. Most people wear masks, hide fractures, suppress truths, but when they meet someone like you, someone who has done the inner work, it stirs something ancient inside them. It's not your words, it's your being. Your presence reminds people of what they buried. Your silence awakens their longing. You don't speak to their ego. You speak to their soul. And that kind of resonance can't be explained, only felt. Some will cherish it, others will resist it, but no one forgets it. You don't need a title to be a teacher. You don't need a stage to be a leader. Your presence is enough. Your authenticity is the permission others didn't know they needed. You are the mirror, not of who people pretend to be, but of who they could become. So if you've ever wondered why people seem to remember you after one conversation, why they confess things without meaning to, why you feel like an emotional tuning fork in every room, now you know. It's not in your head. It's in your aura. And while only 1% of people carry this kind of frequency, it's not because they're chosen. It's because they chose. Chose to go deep. Chose to stop pretending. Chose to become real, even when it hurt. So no matter how many times you've been misunderstood, ghosted, idolized, or pushed away, remember this. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to understand yourself so deeply that the noise can't touch you. Let your presence keep doing what it's always done, waking people up. And if this resonates with you, if you see yourself in these words, then don't walk this journey alone. Like, share, or subscribe to our channel. Let this message find the others who've been walking quietly with the same weight. You're not alone, and you never were.